In today's video, I want to show you guys on how you can make an expense splitter for your roommates or housemates. So that way it's easier for you and your roommates to track and split expenses, to see who's paid, and just kind of have the whole thing calculated automatically for you. Now this method I'm showing you is relatively easy to make and it's fairly quick as well. So without further ado, let's just jump right in. Okay, so in today's tutorial, I'm going to be using Google Sheets. So go ahead and open up a new Google Sheets document. Now, obviously, Google Sheets is going to be perfect for this purpose, just for the fact that you can share it amongst your friends, you can share it amongst your housemates, roommates, right? Start typing in the column headers here, and here's just a couple of things that I could think of. Again, you could come up with anything, but of course, the first thing I want to add is date, because we want to know what date this person paid for something, a description of what this transaction is. Any comments about it, like maybe if we have any notes, comments like, okay, maybe we're paying a little bit more this time, or there's an auto pay discount, whatever comments that you and your roommates could coordinate with. And we're gonna add a paid by, okay? So paid by is very important because it tells the person who paid this bill. So who should the other roommates Venmo, Zelle, whatever they use, PayPal, right? And then of course the amount of money paid. And we're gonna do this one is called equal. And equal is going to be basically saying like it's going to be an even split. So whether it's like an internet bill, whether it's a water utility bill, and it's just going to be a checkbox here that we're going to add later, basically saying like, did we equally split this? Okay. Now there's going to be a formula that follows this. It's going to be one formula, relatively complex, but it's still somewhat easy to follow. But we're going to delve into that later. Okay. So just trust me, we want this equal here. To just know whether this transaction is equally split amongst your housemates or your roommates. Now, after this is basically all the columns you need for everybody to kind of fill it out in terms of when every expense is paid. Now, what's gonna happen now is I'm gonna start making the columns for the individual roommates, right? So I'm gonna make one for myself here, for example, as I'm one of the roommates in a house, for example, right? So I'm gonna put a percentage sign. Now this percentage sign is going to be, if this equal sign is not checked, how much percent of that expense am I subject to pay, right? If, for example, I use a lot of water, or I have a co-roommate, like me and my girlfriend, we're living somewhere together, maybe we're taking a bigger percentage of the water bill or the internet bill, right? So this percent is going to be very important, but we're going to leave that for later. You kind of just have to trust the process here. It'll all make sense in the end. Now the next one I'm going to add is a dollar sign. Now you could just change this to whatever. So you can name it like Jeremy percent, or whatever your name is, Jeremy dollar. And this dollar is going to be here if you're very specific to the dollar amount that can be calculated in a percentage and it's not equal, right? For example, I'm gonna give you guys an example here so I don't confuse you guys. You guys have a roommate's dinner at McDonald's or at Chili's, right? Wherever it is. You don't know, like, you can't calculate, I ate 25% of mozzarella sticks or 37% of, I don't know, baked chili soup, right? You don't know. So it's better to just kind of put in the amount that you have of that menu item or of that specific expense if you can't calculate the percentage or if it's not split equally, right? So this is kind of like a manual calculation to begin with. So then next I want to just add my due, my total due, like how much I actually owe. And this is where the formula will come in soon, but this will be done in a second. And then of course, I'm gonna have a checkbox here to see whether I paid or not, okay? So this is a very, very straightforward and simple roommate expense calculator, and this is just done for one person, right? Obviously it's not automated yet. We need to start creating the formulas for this. But what I can do is I'm just gonna bold this. I'm just doing Control B. I'm selecting the cells here, Control B. And I'm also just gonna increase the font size a little bit to maybe about 14, maybe 12. Maybe that's a little too large because I want to make room for all the other roommates, right? And what I can do here as well is I can actually color code mine. So color code my let's name this Jeremy paid. Color code the cells that I want, and I'm a big fan of blue, so I'm going to color it blue. So there you go. So now it's it knows like my shares only, and this is the things that I care for here. And the rest of the stuff here, the more common cells that people can fill out, I'm just gonna color code them like an orange, like a yellow. I'm gonna just go ahead and right click this row 1 here. I'm gonna create one row above this one, and I could make this like, also I could change the color of this too. If you select this row here, it's gonna select the whole row across, and I'm gonna change it to, I'm just gonna reset the color so it's like white, right? I'm gonna expand the size a little bit. Now this is just a nice little title here. I'm gonna call it, I don't know, the tutorial house, right? That's gonna be what our house name is called. You know, we have different roommates in the tutorial house. We all make different tutorials, sure. I'm gonna merge the cells here just so they're together. Again, this is all cosmetic purposes. I'm gonna center align the text, and I'm gonna vertically align this right here, okay? Now in the tutorial house, let's just say we have 3 residents. So I'm gonna do number of residents here. And I'm gonna do the same thing where I'm gonna center and I'm gonna vertically align, and I'm gonna do 3. So we have 3 residents here in the tutorial house. Now this one I'm gonna left align just so that way, or I could just center align, it doesn't matter. Center align, and I'm gonna do vertical align as well. So that way we have 3 residents here in the tutorial house, okay? Now this resident number is very important because we're gonna use this for a formula. Okay, great. So now that we're good with that, I'm gonna go ahead and add the checkbox here on this equal, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and insert checkbox like so. And then I'm gonna go ahead and add a checkbox on whether I paid it or not. So insert checkbox like so. So perfect, you can just check it, uncheck it, same here, okay? So no formulas, we've added no formulas so far. And there's really only one formula that we really need to worry about, okay? Again, the formula may seem a little complex, but I will leave it down below in the description so you guys can just copy paste it. If you're making this exactly the way I'm doing it, you can go ahead and copy paste it and just tweak it a little bit, okay? So the amount here, I'm just gonna click on the E here, and I'm gonna change it to a currency, format as currency, so that way whenever we put, you know, values in, it just becomes a dollar amount. Same thing here with the Jeremy money or your name money or whatever. And I know I formatted this resident count here. You can just reset it back to number. So more formats, you can just do automatic. So it resets it back to whatever it was before. Same thing here with Jeremy's due. I'm gonna go ahead and make it as currency, right? And then here, Jeremy's percentage, I'm gonna go ahead and select this row and I'm gonna make it into a percentage, okay? So whatever I type 50, it becomes 50%. Whatever I type 20, it becomes 20%. Same with all this, okay? It becomes $1, it becomes $1 because we just formatted it as currency, okay? So great. And then for the date as well, if you want to, you can format it as a date. So you click on this format. You could also click format, number, and you could also do date, for example. So that way, you know, for today, for example, 10/7/25, it'll format it as a date, okay? So perfect. Okay, so let's just start with the formula now. So for example, we're gonna have, let's just start with a dummy transaction, okay? So today it's gonna be October 7th. I wonder if it can format it. Yeah, see, it'll just automatically format whatever you put. I paid for the internet, okay? So let's say internet bill, and this is for our, I don't know, monthly internet bill, right? And who paid for it? I did. So I live in Jeremy, so that way my roommates know, hey, Zelle or Cash App, Venmo me, right? How much was our internet bill this month? Well, our internet bill is a default $60, right? So what I want is that if, let's just say I hit this equal sign right here, right? If I hit this equal sign, then I want it to be split amongst 3 residents. So it's gonna be 60 divided by 3, right? And it's gonna make my due say $20 because 60 divided by 3 is 20 and we're splitting it evenly, right? Now, if for example, we're not splitting it evenly, let's just say one of the residents is out of the house for the month, they don't need to pay an internet bill, whatever. So now it's not equal anymore, but rather instead I'm paying 50% of it, then it's gonna say 30 here, right? I'm just walking through the logic here with you guys so you guys can understand it. And for whatever reason, let's just say I'm paying, you know, a majority of it, or there's a set amount, I paid it, you know, $7 extra, so now I pay 37 instead. Then it could this is the override value and my due will be this value, okay? So how do we go about that, right? How do we make that formula? So I'm gonna walk that through with you guys here with the logic so that way you guys can understand, not only copy and paste, but really understand the logic, right? Coming from a computer science grad, I will show you guys if and else statements here, okay? It's gonna be a little complicated, but you will understand it if I'm talking through it in English, okay? So obviously to write formulas, I'm gonna do equal sign, right? So I'm gonna do equal sign if, okay? So equal sign if here, and here's the logical expression, okay? The first thing we wanna check is if this checkbox right here, is it checked, right? And if it is checked, the value of true, I've just hit a comma, right? If it is checked, what happens if it's true? Well, we want to get this amount, 60 bucks, if it's equally split, right? Logically, it makes sense to split the amount divided by the slash, right? The slash sign divided by the amount of residents. That makes sense, right? If we're paying equally, split the amount of dollars by the amount of residents in the house. Yes? Now, if I hit a comma again, this is what happens if it's false. So if this isn't checked, then what are we gonna do? Well, then we're gonna check, is there a set percentage amount that I want to define, right? So then I'm gonna do another if within an if. This is like a nested if, okay? It's getting kind of complicated, but this if will only happen if this isn't checked, okay? So if, I'm gonna do another parentheses here, this cell right here, G3, right? If it doesn't have, if it's not blank, basically, if it has something, so that the not expression here in Google Sheets is this open caret, close caret, or you could say less than, greater than. If it's not blank, if it's not two quotations to represent blank, right? Because nothing in the quotation means blank. Then we're gonna do so that means if this thing has something in it, then we're gonna do this amount, right, multiplied by the percentage itself. So if it's not equal, then okay, well then and you're defining a percentage here. Let's do 15% of 60 or something, right? But however, if it is blank, right? If the expression is blank, then we'll just put whatever manual input we're gonna put. Okay. Now I'm gonna close this up with two closing parentheses, like so, and I'm gonna hit enter. As you can see, nothing happened. Great. Did we mess up? No, that's actually perfect because it doesn't give us an error, right? So let's walk through what we just did, okay? So is it equal, right? 60 bucks. Are we splitting it equally? Yes. Perfect. It works. You can see here that I now owe 20 bucks. Perfect. Let's just say it's not split equally. Let's just say one of my roommates was out for the month. He was on vacation in Japan, and now me and my other roommate split it at 50-50. So it's no longer equal, but we don't want to move the residence to 2 because it doesn't make sense. He's still part of a roommate. He's going to come back next month. Okay, that's fine. So I'm going to pay 50% of the internet bill. Perfect. Now guess what? It calculated 30 instead, okay? Now let's just say we don't want that. I don't know the percentage. We're eating Chili's. I paid $12 for mozzarella sticks, okay? So I just put $12 here manually, boom. I just put 12 here. Perfect, it's good. So let's just say I'm paying the bill for the restaurant. I can now input everybody's different amounts here to everybody's like respective columns, right? So that's how this do part works. Now, the interesting thing is obviously if I move stuff over, it's not going to translate. The formula is not going to translate. So that's why we need to anchor the cells, okay? Now, what do I mean by this, right? But what I mean is like if I kind of drag this down, this whole formula thing down like this, it's not going to calculate correctly because now you can see all the different cells are moving and it's no longer splitting it by this number. This is now splitting it by H2, which is this. This is not a valid like number, right? So now what we have to do is that we're actually going to have to anchor it. So by anchoring it, I mean putting a $sign in front of it to know that it's that row, okay? So what I mean by this is, okay, so row E is always going to be the amount, right? Row F is always going to be this equal amount. It's never going to change. So I'm going to hit row F here. I'm going to put a $sign right in front of the F. So that way it'll always check for the checkbox here. Regardless if we have more roommates, it's going to check for this one here. Same thing for the E, right? We want all the common cells, common columns to be the same, to be anchored. But the rows could change because you could have multiple transactions, right? From F3, it could now be F4 now for the next transaction. We don't know. But the one thing that we know is this H1 cell right here, it'll never change. It'll always stay in this corner of the document or the top of the document. So I'm going to put a $sign on the H and $sign on the 1 to really anchor it down to this specific cell, okay? And now all the other ones, I could just do the anchor again. Anchor G3, anchor E3. I'm not anchoring the numbers here because there's obviously multiple rows. So it could be E4, E5, E6. I'm going to do anchor G3 here again. And then the H3 here. So, perfect. Now that way, when we drag it down, it's going to be an anchored amount, okay? So now what does this mean? Now I can actually finally start making cells for new roommates. So if I just drag this first two right here, don't forget I have a checkbox here and the formula here, right? If I just drag it like this, 4 more to the right, now we can have more friends. So we can, for example, have Mike here, you know, Mike Dollar, Mike's due, right? And Mike pay yet? Mike paid here. Okay, and then to avoid confusion, I'm just gonna go ahead and change this column's color to, I don't know, maybe Mike's favorite color is red or pink, right? I'm gonna reset the color at the top here. Perfect. So now what happens is when we're looking at this again, we may need to fix some formulas, right? Because now we're checking, it's checking all my dues here. So is it equal? If it is, then, you know, divide amount from here. That's perfectly fine. Now this part is the one that's a little bit messed up. The second if statement here. So if not, it's no longer G3 now. We're looking for the percentage. So that's K. If K3, if Mike's percentage is not equal, then you wanna multiply the amount, which is still correct, by K3 again, because K3 is this percentage. And then instead of H3, this money here, we want it to be L3, right? Because that's gonna be the Mike's amount. So basically what we just did is we just configured it for Mike. So now we have this equal here, you know, we can do, the 20 will be split amongst 3 people, which I haven't made the third person yet, but, and then everything will work accordingly. So let's just say 30% and Mike pays 70% of the utility bill. See, it gets calculated. And we know, has Mike paid yet? If you paid, you check this button, great, good to go. And one thing you can also do is that to keep log of when you paid or not, you can also right click on this checkbox and you can actually insert a note, which is great because right click insert note, just say, you know, I Zelled Jeremy, I don't know, $42 on 10/7/25. Cool, perfect. So now you have this little note. You know, just to basically log your transaction, whatever. You don't need to, but I think it's just a nice little note that doesn't take up any space. Now, same thing, right? If I want to add, let's just say that our final and third roommate, I can do the same thing. I can drag this out 4 like this. Since there's 4 cells here, I'm dragging it 4. And now I'm gonna go ahead and change the color. For example, this will be, I don't know, green, right? I'm gonna, you know, color this, reset the top one again. Now we're gonna change this to, for example, Sully. So, let's do Sully here. Sully's due, right? So now you know this whole process. And did Sully pay yet? So Sully paid. Okay. And now the same thing here. Obviously, this formula may not be 100% correct because it's still getting the second if here is still getting it from Mike. So instead of K3, we want to make it O3 because Sully's percentage is an O. Instead of E3, actually E3 is perfectly fine because it's still getting from this amount. Again, replacing all K3 with O3. And the L3, the dollar amount, should be Sully's dollar amount, which is in P, right? Let me know if that makes sense. P, perfect. And now 10% of, you know, 60 bucks is 6. And then if, for example, you know, we are ignoring these percentages, and we want to check everybody split an equal amount, well, everybody just owes 20 bucks. See, makes sense. You know, I paid, Mike paid, Sully paid, done. We logged it here. It's, you know, transactions logged, good to go. And then again, if I just uncheck this, everything will clear out. And you don't, remember, you never want to fill anything in here in this do part manually, okay? It's a formula. You don't want to mess with the formula. So best you don't do that. But what you can do is if you select all of this, right? All of this together, and you drag it all the way down here from this bottom right corner, this circle, drag it all the way down, you know, to however many you want. Now you can actually have different columns here, and the formula will stick, okay? And this formula is the formula, you don't have to touch it ever again. It will actually just go according to these rows right here, to the amount and whatsoever, right? So basically, you just have this due, and you know, if you have, you know, 45 here and you have an even split, it'll do 15, 15, 15. Same thing here. If you want to do 20%, it'll do $9. Maybe Mike only has 40%, $18, and then we'll do another 40% here, another 18 for Sully. All right, so everything is automatic here once you drag it all the way down. Don't touch the formula. Don't accidentally delete this cell because there is still a formula within the cell. Let me just show you, for example, creating the new roommate, right? So let's just say I have another roommate here. So I'm going to do drag a 4, same thing as we did before. Change the color for this. So for example, now it's going to be purple. And then, you know, we're going to change it to Randall, for example. Randall's going to be our 4th roommate, right? Randall. And then we're going to change, actually I forgot to select the whole thing. I'm going to select the whole column here and change it to purple, right? And I'm going to just reset the top one here because we don't need that. So now the same thing. So for Randall's dues, again, take a look at the second if statement and you just got to correct this part. Value if, you know, this percentage here, if what is it called, S3 is not empty, then take this initial amount right here to my left. I can't see it, but I have to scroll through. But take this initial amount, right, and multiply it by S3 itself. If not, then do T3, the manual amount. Same thing here. So now we just have to change the resident amount of 4, since we have 4 residents now, me, Mike, Sully, and Randall. And when we split it equally, you can see 15, 15, 15, 15. Automatically calculated, right? Automatically calculated. And same thing here. You can always just grab this and just drag it all the way down. And now you have a 4th roommate, all calculated, all pretty, you know, pretty nice and figured out on the sheet. So, and there's really only one formula you need to worry about that I explained very thoroughly. So hopefully you guys all understand this formula. So if you guys enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button down below. And I will see you guys all in the next video.